Thanks very much for tuning in, everyone, on this beautiful spring day. And just kind of a couple days after Earth Day. So thanks everyone for tuning in this morning. My name's Ryan Fisher. I'm the curator of vertebrate zoology at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. And I love watching birds. And so today what we're going to do is give you a little bit of an idea of how to start bird watching and describe one of the activities that you can definitely get outside today to go look for birds in your community. First thing that everyone always has a question when they get into a new hobby is really, where the heck do I even start bird watching? And so that's what we're going to give you a few hints today of how to kind of get into the hobby of bird watching and what things to look for on birds to help you identify them. So obviously the first step, birds really don't like to live inside. They're kind of typically and almost all the time outside. And so the first thing that you really have to do to start bird watching is to go outside. But you can go outside in a lot of different places and see birds. So, a lot of people have the option and they have a backyard. You can look for birds in your backyard, especially if you have a bird feeder or if you have some bird houses. But you can also see lots of birds just going out for a walk around your neighborhood or going to sit in one of your favorite city parks. Like I mentioned, people usually have some options to set up bird feeders or even bird houses in your yard or bird baths. And this is a really great way to attract birds so that you can kind of see them even if you're sitting inside your house. And then kind of as summer comes along, you can always get out and, camp or hike in a lot of the amazing natural areas that we have here in Saskatchewan to see birds. Now, when you're outside, what you really want to do is try to find places that birds like to be, or this is what we call bird habitat. So in the city, that typically means areas that have lots of trees, but it could open field. So it might be a soccer field or a baseball diamond, or you might just go slightly outside the city into a wheat field and you can find lots of birds there that are really quite different than the birds you might find in the city. Regina has a great place called Wascana Lake to go look for lots of birds that are associated with big lakes. And there's tons of lakes around Saskatchewan that you can go bird watch. And then even some smaller bodies of water called wetlands really hold an interesting and diverse group of birds that are quite different from ones that you might find in the city or even in open fields. Now, when you go outside, what you want to do is you want to look and listen for birds really quietly. So today we're really going to kind of focus on what you might see when you go outside. But once you start to have mastered that aspect of bird watching, you can move on to listening and trying to identify the different sounds that bird makes. That's a little bit more of a challenge, but it's something that's really fun to do as you can experience. So birds really like and are most active in the morning. So that's probably the best time to go bird watching. But there also are some birds that are more active at night, so things like owls. So really at any time of day, you're probably likely to see different birds in the city or wherever you're out walking. Now, what about weather? So birds, like people, they really don't like to be active and out and about when the weather isn't very good. So you kind of want to time your bird watching activities when it's a relatively high temperature. It's sunny out. Birds tend to be a little bit more active when it's sunny compared to when it's cloudy. But probably most importantly, you probably don't want to be out bird watching when it's snowing or it's raining or there's really high winds. Birds just really don't like to be out and about doing things when the weather conditions aren't very good. So you're kind of, if you're uncomfortable being outside at a certain time, the birds will probably also be somewhat uncomfortable. So many birds out there and there's so little time. how the heck do I figure out what I'm looking at? Especially if you come to a park and you see something like this. You're watching a tree and then a little bird goes zipping by in about 2 seconds into another tree and you can't see it. How the heck can you identify what you just saw? Well, I love this slide. I'm a bit of an Angry Birds fan. I've played Angry Birds on my phone and I've seen the Angry Birds movie. But this is a really great slide because it really highlights the different things that we can look at when you're trying to identify birds. So if I asked you to identify Hal in the middle here, one of the first things that you probably notice is that Hal is green compared to all the other birds that might be red, black, yellow, pink, blue, or orange. So color is a really great tool that you can use to help identify different types of birds. Now, what if we came across Terrence and Red? They're kind of the same color, they have the same markings, but one of the biggest differences between the two of them is size. Terrence is a heck of a lot bigger than Red. And so size is one of the characteristics of birds that we can use to help us identify different types of birds that we see. And lastly, the other thing that we can look at is shape. So, if I asked you to identify Chuck, Chuck is kind of a triangle shape compared to some of the round shapes of Terrence and Bomb and Red and Bubbles. And so that helps us distinguish Chuck from every other bird on this particular slide. So just to kind of recap, a couple of the things that you want to keep an eye out when you're bird watching is the size of the bird. This is a really great comparison. So is it about the size of a baseball? Is it the size of a softball? Or is it the size of a basketball or bigger? And we typically think of that middle kind of softball size is about the size of a robin. So is it smaller than a robin or is it bigger than a robin will really help you nail down and identify what type of bird you're seeing. You can also tell a lot of birds just by their shape, even if you can't see the color or you really can't, you're far away and you can't tell the size. Just by the silhouette or the shape of the bird, you can kind of tell a lot about what it might be. Is it tall and skinny? Does it have a big long beak? Is it kind of short and squat? Is it really long and thin? Does it have long legs? Does it have short legs? And so those are some of the things that you can look at and kind of keep in mind as you start your bird watching adventure. And lastly, color is probably the biggest thing that everyone notices when they're bird watching. It's one of the things that's really, really amazing to me as a lover of birds is just the vast amount of different colors that some of the birds that we see here in the city are. So we can have birds that are the really, really bright yellow color to some birds that are really drab and kind of are black. We have some birds that are blue. So color is one of the best ways that you can use to identify birds. Another thing to kind of keep an eye on is the behavior of birds. So we have some birds in the city and outside the city that you might only see if they're soaring really, really high up in the air. In the middle is, in the cities, you've probably seen these little guys called nuthatches, or sometimes called the upside down bird, because they'll tend to kind of walk on the side of tree trunks up and down the tree trunk. So noting the behavior of a bird, if it's walking down a tree, can really, really help identify it. Maybe the bird that you see is swimming around in a lake. That's also a really good cue as to what it might be. We have things in the city like woodpeckers that you'll hopping up a tree. You may see it tapping its beak on a tree as well. It could be looking for insects to eat, or it could be digging out a hole to nest in. And then lastly, we may see some birds. We always typically think of birds as birds that are sort of flying around, but lots of birds we might see sort of hanging out and hopping around on the ground. Robins are a really good example of this. A lot of the times we see them, they're out trying to find different things to eat, like insects or worms, and we tend to see them on the ground. So that's a really good way to identify different birds. So I did just want to touch a little bit on bird watching ethics. So these are things not to do while you're bird watching. So the first thing is to not chase birds. A lot of the birds that we have returning to Saskatchewan at this time of year and who might be here all summer have flown all the way from places as far as Texas, Mexico, and even some of them from South America. So you really don't want to chase them around. Birds don't have a lot of energy to be flying around all the time in response to kind of humans bugging them. We want to let birds have their space. So if at all possible, try to keep as far away from the bird as possible and not influence its behavior. And the other thing we sometimes see people doing is using recorded calls on their phone to call birds in. And again, generally, we really don't want to change the behavior of the bird that we're trying to watch. And this causes them, of course, to use up a lot of energy flying around, trying to find where that recorded call is coming from. So generally, we recommend that people don't use recorded calls to try to lure birds in. So your mission today, should you choose to accept it, and I call this mission possible because it's a totally fun thing to do and get outside, especially when the weather is nice like this. So you're going to start a bird watching field notebook today. What you'll need is a notebook. You could also use a tablet or even your phone. Obviously, you need a pencil or pen if you're using a notebook. You can do this without binoculars. Binoculars can sometimes make your life a little bit easier when you're trying to identify birds because you can bring them up really close and see those really, really small details like color and their behavior. But really, we just kind of want you to sit quite quietly and observe birds, wherever you are. So, like I said, the first step is to get outside. Either sit quietly in your backyard, or you can even watch your yard from a window. That's a really great option because you don't disturb the birds that way. You can go for a walk in your neighborhood, or you can find a park where you can walk or sit quietly. There's lots of great opportunities in and around some of our cities. I'm from Regina, and so Condi Nature Refuge, White Butte, and Wascana Trails are great places to go look for birds. And then let's start your field notebook. So you see a bird kind of flying around. Let's say you've got your binoculars out. The first thing that you want to record is what type of habitat you're in. So what are the areas that you're walking around in that birds might like? Is it treed? Are you in an open field? Maybe you're around Wascana Lake, or maybe you're just outside the city looking at a small wetland where there's lots of cattails and things like that. And you see your bird. What size is it? Is it sort of the smaller baseball size? Is it softball size or about the size of a robin? Or is it basketball size, a really, really big bird that you can see from far away? Next thing to record is its shape. Is it tall or skinny? Is it short and squat? Does it have a long beak or a short beak? Does it have long legs or does it have short legs compared to its body? What about its tail? Does it have a really, really long tail compared to its body? Or does it have a really short tail? These are all things that will help you narrow down what type of bird you're seeing. If you remember too, color is really, really important. And if anything in your field notebook, color is the best thing to take note of as you're bird watching. There's kind of 6 places on a bird that we would like you to record the different colors that you see. Now, you might not be able to record all colors in all 6 spots because you might just not have time to see everything on a particular bird, but try to fill out as much as possible. So the bird kind of hopping around on the ground, what color is its back? What color is its head? What about its throat or its belly or breast? If you see the bird flying, you might get a really good look at its wings or its tail. So if we saw this American robin here, you'd say that the head is black, the throat is kind of white with some black streaks, breast is orange, the back wings and tail are all gray. And if you gave me this description, I'd know right away that it was a robin that you were describing. You also want to note some of the behaviors that you see when you're out bird watching. And this is a really, really great way to get in science. This is how a lot of scientists study birds, is they sit and they watch their behavior. So note things like whether or not the bird is soaring, it's hopping on the ground, it's flying from tree to tree, whether it's swimming, or maybe it's perched on the side of a tree. This will all help you identify what type of bird you're seeing. Now, you've filled out your field notebook. Maybe you've gone home or you've got something on your phone to double check what you saw, but how the heck do you know if you're right? Or how do you try to figure out, based on all of those things that you've been looking at, what type of bird it is? Well, there's a couple really, really great websites that you can check out. So one is birdscanada.org, and you can actually download a photographic guide of birds that you might find in whatever area you're bird watching in. You can sign up for a website called eBird. It's a citizen science website, and you can explore the Regina region. It'll show you pictures of all the birds that have been recently seen in the area that you're bird watching. There's a really amazing group of people on the Sask Birders Facebook page that will gladly help you identify what bird you saw. It's even better if you have a picture of it. Another great way to help you identify birds is a website called iNaturalist. You kind of have to have a picture here and you can upload it, and then other experts can help you identify what it is. Your local library will also probably have a lot of good field guides, paper books that you can bring with you while you're out bird watching to help you identify the birds that you see and hear. But most of all, have fun. Bird watching is a fun and it's super inexpensive hobby for everyone. Birds are really, really amazing animals to watch, in my opinion, but it's a multi-million or billion-dollar industry in North America. There's tons of people that love to go out and bird watch. And kind of as a side benefit, looking for birds around the city is great exercise, and it's a great opportunity to spend some time outdoors. So I hope you have fun today. It's a beautiful day out, not a lot of wind, nice temperature. So get out there, try our bird watching field notebook activity. Hope you can identify some of the birds that you see, and most of all, have fun. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Ryan. That was absolutely awesome. So glad to have you. I learned so much just from that quick little presentation. And thank you so much for being flexible with the presentation times today, because it has been quite an adventure already. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, I just want to say yet again, thank you for attending, everyone. Thank you, Ryan, for speaking. And thanks to the City of Regina for the funding that made our little event possible. I'm just going to end this recording and then start a new one where Shannon can introduce our next speaker.